Hey folks, it's Bob here. I just wanted to let you know how Seafoam has saved my BMW X5. I still can't believe it. And this is one of those talking videos. I'm not showing you anything and I generally hate when I get on a video wanting to learn something and everybody just blah, 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 blah. This is going to be very quick, and I'll tell you the scenario. I've had a 9-month long problem with my X5. It started with I'm driving along and the engine just went boom, 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 like it stopped running for a split second. It wasn't rough running, it wasn't a misfire, it was just like it just stopped. So I have an analyzer, and I put the analyzer on, and it said crankshaft positioning sensor. So, of course, I go to YouTube, and YouTube tells me everything. Don't drive the car if that thing's failing, because it'll crap out on you. I was able to drive it for maybe a couple more days, and then I have another car that I was driving to work, and the car, the dump is like half a mile from my house, so I figured, well, I'll take it to make a dump run. I just happened to come back, and I got my driveway. The engine just died. That was it. And of course, the crankshaft positioning sensor is nothing basically more than a magnet that sends a signal every time the crankshaft goes past this magnet. It sends it to the computer, and the computer can count the revolutions per minute and sync everything up with the engine for the fuel injection and the combustion. And I'm no mechanic. I'm a parts changer, so I'm learning as I go along, even at my advanced age. So I went to the dealer. I swear the dealer was kidding me because they said this crankshaft position sensor is $600, and I couldn't believe it. I go, well, forget that. So I go online. I buy one for like $20. It comes in the mail. It's a little plastic piece with a little magnet in it and a couple of wires sticking out of it. Okay, long story short, I had to take the intake manifold off the car because it's underneath the starter, and I put on this new crankshaft positioning sensor, and while I took the whole intake manifold off the car, disconnected everything, I took the DESA valve off for whatever reason, didn't have to, took the throttle body off, didn't really have to, but I was just checking everything out, everything looked nice and clean. So, put it all back together. Well, also, too, the intake manifold had been taken off when I did the starter a couple years ago. And I did not, because you had to pull that to get to the starter, and I did not change the intake manifold gaskets. Now, my car's got 183,000 miles on it, and probably about 178,000 miles on it when this happened. So I didn't change the intake manifold gaskets, but what I did do is I put some gasket maker, high heat gasket maker. I figured, this will help just to get a good seal on the intake manifold. So I put that gop around there, put it all back together. Car ran beautiful. Problem solved for 3 months. Then it starts with the intermittent misfire on acceleration. It's chipping along. It's running rough sometimes. I put my analyzer on. It's showing several codes. I look up the code combination, and then they say it's the Valvetronic motor on the valve cover. Of course, I'm not a mechanic. I had one of those Harbor Freight analyzers made in China, so, it could be way off base. Who knows? But I ordered a Valvetronic motor online, stuck it in there. Seemed to run better for a couple of days, maybe a week. Then it starts right back up. And it says it's misfiring on engine 3. So I go out and buy a new coil. I pop that thing on. Engine cylinder 3 seems to run okay for a little while. Multiple issues. Now I'm going along, and I'm like 2,500 miles from an oil change, and the low oil warning light comes on. Now, I change my oil with a high quality synthetic every 5,000 miles. and it goes between oil changes. So now it's using oil. I go, what the hell is going on? It's using oil. So I go back to YouTube, and somebody showed me, it says, could be a PCV valve. PCV valve, I don't remember if it's stuck open or closed, but one of those, the oil will leave the crankcase and go through that breather hose into the intake manifold. So what I did is I went out and bought a vacuum pump. They say if you put a vacuum pump on the PCV valve, that if it holds vacuum, the diaphragm's still good. If it doesn't hold vacuum, the diaphragm's shot. Well, it didn't hold any vacuum, and then which makes me think the PCV valve is shot. And of course, you E70 N52 owners know that the PCV valve is molded into the valve cover. It's all one piece. So I happened to take the DISA valve off just to check. And when I had the DISA valve off before, it was nice and dry. I take the DISA valve off, there's oil all in there. So obviously oil's pumping in through the PCV valve. Okay, so then I read about the DISA valve, and they said on YouTube that little plastic flapper that the DISA valve opens up, that thing can crack and break, and it can go into the intake manifold. So I go, well, I don't want that to happen. So I bought a new DISA valve. Didn't really need it, but I put the DISA valve on for peace of mind. So I cleaned all the oil out of the intake manifold, and I ordered a PCV valve that you can cut off the old one on the valve cover and assemble the new PCV valve. PCV valve's $20-something. Came in the mail, went out and bought a Dremel tool. And again, I watched all this on YouTube. YouTube's fantastic for all the help. And I gently cut the old PCV valve off. I could see the diaphragm was crap. And I put the new PCV valve on. Now, I saw in a YouTube video where this I thought it was ingenious. This fella said rather than cement it to be sure that everything's running right, he said tape the PCV valve down. So I went out and I got the aluminum tape, and that's exactly what I did. I taped it down. I'm thinking everything's great, put it all back together. It runs okay for a couple of days. Starts in with the same misfiring, the oil. I'm starting, also on the analyzer it says, now it's saying lean condition, bank 1, bank 2. So that says maybe fuel injectors, maybe it's not getting enough, could be a vacuum leak, maybe it's getting not enough fuel, like poor fuel injectors or a bad fuel pump. And I'm going, okay, I'm getting ready to take it to somebody that knows what they're doing. And so long story short, the PCV valve was loose. I took everything apart. I get down there. The tape didn't hold. The thing's loose. It's rattling around. So now I finally get some really good epoxy cement, and I cement the thing down. Put it all back together. It's still not running really great. The oil consumption's like 500 miles to the quart of oil. And now when I accelerate, it would go a week, and I was babying it because it's a high mileage car and I'm not looking for trouble on the engine. So I drive it back and forth to work and I'm babying it. Still getting 20 miles to the gallon of gas. So the fuel consumption didn't drop. It's idling really nice. No engine noises. And but if I get on it at all, the engine knock was crazy. Like a push rod's going to come through the side of the engine, which might have happened if I pushed it. So I got right off on it. And they're basically driving it like a 100-year-old guy. Cars piling up behind me because I'm accelerating from 0 to 60 in like 45 seconds. And but I drove it. And it's using oil. So now I said, F it. This is ridiculous. It's got to be, I probably glued part of the diaphragm when I put that PCV valve on. I took it off. That PCV valve was stuck to that thing. Okay, so now I order a new valve cover online, $80. I should have done that right from the beginning because it was cheap. $80 PCV valve is connected already to the valve cover. Have a new Valvetronic motor in there, which I took off. I ordered new coils straight across the board. And, you know, I'm the old school, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I didn't think there was anything matter with the plugs. They're supposed to be 100,000 mile plugs. I got 80,000 miles on it. You know, I got 183,000 miles on the car. My personal goal is to hit 200 and then probably get rid of it. So I didn't buy new plugs. So I changed the valve cover gasket, and I bought a new rebreather hose that goes from the back of the valve cover into the intake manifold. When I took off the old breather hose, there's oil in there. So I go, okay, this is it. Now, of course, I had to loosen the intake manifold in order to get really snap on that breather hose. And while I had the intake manifold off, I put new intake manifold gaskets on, put the new rebreather hose in, didn't clean anything out, didn't take the diesel valve off and get the oil out of there or anything. I figured it'd burn off eventually, and if the problem's fixed. And I put the valve cover gasket on and 6 new coils. So now I go to test drive it. Second gear, boy, if you got on it at all, that engine wrap was a killer. I mean, like, the engine's gonna blow up. So now I figured, all right, I'm gonna go buy plugs, and I'm gonna put plugs in. I go buy plugs, and I'm long-winded, but here's the point. I'm putting the plugs in. I don't have an endoscope to go down inside the cylinder head, but I got a really high, powerful flashlight. So I'm looking in the cylinder when that spark plug's out, and I go, what the hell is this? It just looks like huge carbon crap all on top of the cylinder and where the valves are. Probably from me driving the car gingerly for about 4,000 miles with the oil going into the cylinder head. And I got this huge carbon buildup. And to be honest with you, I thought I had internal motor damage and the car would never be right. But I put the plugs in. And I go to take a drive, still wrapping. So now I said, Seafoam. I'm going to do Seafoam. I don't generally believe in stuff like that. Engine clean out, lubrication. So I put 1 ounce of Seafoam per gallon of gasoline. I poured it in the gas tank. I put 15 ounces in. I estimated I had about 15 gallons of gas. Then my car holds 6 quarts of oil on the instrument panel. It says it's probably down to about 5 quarts. So I put 5 ounces of Seafoam liquid into the crankcase on a warm engine. Then I took the spray Seafoam, disconnected the intake air hose from the air filter, but past the mass airflow sensor, and stuck the little red hose in there and kept the hose on, but I got the hose pushed in and then connected the hose back up to the air filter. So the red hose is sticking towards the throttle body. Started the car up, put a brick on the accelerator so it'll go 2,000 RPM, and I emptied that can into the intake manifold. Car was really warm. I shut it off. Went out there, waited for my grandson to get off the school bus. It sat for 20 minutes. He went inside to change, go get a snack. 20 minutes is up. And I came and I started the car. And the crap that came out the back of this car was worse than anything I'd seen on any of the other Seafoam YouTube videos. I think my neighbors thought the house was on fire. It was just went on and on and on. Then they say drive the car for 30 or 40 miles. So I took it for a nice ride on a country road. And it looked like it was hesitating a little bit. Oh, also during that time, like 8 codes tripped. Misfire engine, cylinder 2, misfire engine 3, misfire multiple cylinders, lean condition bank 2, a couple other things. I didn't clear the codes. I just let it sit there. So I start driving it, and gingerly, and then I finally started getting on it a little bit, and I got on it. It was usually, if it was going to do it, was when you were accelerating, and when it hit second gear, that's when the breakdown would occur. No breakdown in second gear. I'm doing like 55, 60. I've driven it about 10 miles. I says, I'm going to punch it. I'm going to see what happens. So I punched it. It went up to $5,000 on the tack and hit third gear. And then a ton of crap came out the back like the engine blew. But the engine sounded fine. And then I got right off it and I'm driving it along. And I'm stopping and accelerating and stopping and accelerating. It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. And I drove it today. It drives like a brand new car. Peppy, smooth, no knocking. There is a little blue smoke at startup. I have a feeling that the fuel injectors may have gotten clogged with carbon deposits and weren't issuing the proper fuel mixture, which might have created a lean condition. And they say if you run the car lean, you can damage engine parts like valve guides and stuff. And that may be the case. I'll tell you right now, I'll do a follow-up video to tell you exactly what the oil consumption is. But if I can get a couple thousand miles out of a quart of oil, I don't care if it smokes a little bit at startup. I love this car. I've had it forever. I've always done all the maintenance on it myself. And it's, as long as it's running smooth and got power and I can get decent oil consumption, I'm a happy man. So what I'm going to do is, let me see if I can switch this back over. Can I switch it? But I'll get out and show you the car, pop the hood. It's running because I'm sitting in a parking lot doing this. But I'll show you the car. It's my 08 X5. That's my engine. Try to take good care of it. I'm the type of person, when I get a car, I keep it till it's done. I've had this car forever and it still drives like a sports car. So I'll keep you updated on the oil consumption. Thanks for listening.